My name is Jim Lee, Technical Sales Manager for IBM for Planning Analytics, or TM1. So this session is about TM1 or Planning Analytics and kind of integration of Cognitive Analytics with Planning Analytics. Question for the audience: how many of you guys have heard or understand TM1 or Planning Analytics? Everybody. Okay. Do you guys have it installed? Anybody has it installed or in production?
We have the one before.
TM1, but not Planning Analytics.
Right.
Okay. TM1, but not Planning Analytics. Excellent. Okay. So it says IBM Planning Analytics. We'll talk a little bit about why we changed the name. All right. So again, my name is Jim Lee, IBM out of Chicago. I have two guys with me, Kent Rabin, back there, and Mike Bender. Yeah, they're the technical Uber guys. So if you guys have any questions, integration, whatever, these two are the guys to ask. But they'll actually be part of the presentation as well. So from an agenda perspective, so we'll do a quick overview of Planning Analytics, or TM1, direction, what's new, a demonstration of it, and then I'm going to turn it over to Kent and Mike, and they'll actually talk about Cognitive Analytics and Planning Analytics integration. So my portion is about 20, 30 minutes tops, and then I'll turn it over to these guys for another 30 minutes, and that should be our hour for the day. So I'm not going to get in-depth into from a demonstration perspective, but I think you'll see some really cool things that you may or may not be familiar with. So, but let me start with this, right? So I guess everybody understands TM1. It is an engine. It's a multi-dimensional modeling engine at the core, right? What that means is that you can look at it by different elements of your data, geographies, products, channels, customers, and so forth. And kind of really look at it from a dimensionality perspective, really looking at it from an analytics engine. Really kind of, if you want looking to improve profitability, improve any operational data sets that you're doing, the analytic engine really becomes a platform for an organization. And when we say it's a platform, it really goes beyond office and finance. So when typically the technology is used for planning and budgeting forecasting because of its what-if analysis capabilities and because of its write-back capabilities. But the application is used for many other areas within an organization, not just the Office of Finance. So whether it's in sales and marketing, or if you're in banks, our customer financial services banks use it for like CCAR reporting. Insurance companies use it for agency reporting. Whether it's in operations, HR, there's a lot of different use cases for the technology because of this OLAP multi-dimensional capabilities on the back end. Make sense? Okay. I'm going to talk. I talk really fast too because I'm from Chicago. I have a very heavy Chicago accent. So, I don't know if you guys are. I think you guys are all locally, right? Most of you guys are. Yeah. So you guys are okay with that. All right. But why is this important, right? So when we talk about Planning Analytics, or TM1, it's actually part of what's called an FOPM, or Financial Operation and Performance Management suite of technologies. And organizations that actually use these technologies are actually better in terms of how they perform relative to their peers that don't use technologies like this. And this was a study done by the CFO magazine. You can kind of see like 85% of companies actually, when they integrate financial planning with strategic planning and operational data, they're actually performing at a higher percentage relative to their peers, which is kind of why technologies like this is very important from an analytics perspective for your organization. So TM1 equals Planning Analytics, right? So when you hear Planning Analytics, it really means TM1. We've rebranded the technology, so we're no longer calling it TM1. We're actually calling it Planning Analytics. And the version that's out there today is Planning Analytics 2.0. So let's talk a little bit about direction, right? So why are we doing this? And so if we look at Planning Analytics from a direction perspective, there's four main things that are actually driving this technology. And so I don't know, from a show of hands, how many have had TM1 for 5 years or more? Let's say 1 year. 1 year, 5 years, okay, more, right? So, okay, at least 5 years, right? So we've changed the technology quite a bit, and there's actually four primary drivers in terms of where we're going with the technology. At a very high level, not getting into details, but we're establishing a standard for planning analytics for whether it's on-prem or cloud. And so if you didn't know, it's actually available in cloud, and in fact, it's been available in cloud for several years now, and our development efforts are cloud first, and then we bring it onto on-prem. So keep that in mind, right? So from a direction perspective, we're bringing standards that are equivalent in functionality for cloud as well as on-premise, but development is on cloud first. We're delivering a whole new user experience and transforming the way users interact with the technology. And we'll spend time here as part of the demonstration today kind of show you what I mean. And so when we look at the user experience, it's really one interface, or really two interfaces, what we call Workspace and Excel that you'll see. That's kind of the primary interfaces going forward from a direction perspective. So you may have heard the term like perspectives or Server Explorer or Architect or TM1 Web, Planning Analytics or TM1 applications. I mean, these are all interfaces that you may have heard for those long-time TM1 users. They're all being migrated to two interfaces, and you'll see that. The other thing that's driving the technology is really kind of the powerful back-end engine. So we're not just really just doing transformation on the front end. We're also continuously improving the back-end performance. And one of the major things that we've actually released with this version is something called hierarchies that you'll see, where you can actually take attributes and they create all virtual hierarchies off of that. Makes it very powerful and very scalable from an analytic perspective, as well as looking at information at various different angles without putting overhead to your TM1 engine or Planning Analytics engine. And then, of course, we're leveraging other IBM solutions around it. So we're kind of expanding the definition of planning. It's not just Planning Analytics, but if you look at Cognos Analytics or Predictive Analytics or Watson Analytics and so forth, we're using other IBM technologies to really expand the definition of planning and integrating that with what you'll see today as part of this demonstration. Right, so these are all kind of directions in terms of where we're going with the technology. So if you have any kind of questions about, well, are we changing our interfaces, or what are we doing by integrating with other technologies? Our direction are these four things in terms of where we're spending our time, resources, and in terms of development efforts and so forth. All right, so let's touch on a couple of these directions. So when we talk about transforming the user experience, really, everything on the left, to your left side, are kind of the legacy interfaces, if you will. And they're all being transformed to these two interfaces that you'll see today, Workspace and Planning Analytics Excel. So all the functionality, whether you're a user, a modeler, or an administrator, will actually be done just through these two interfaces. Web-based, mobile-based, and because the technology is sharing the same code, you'll see the interaction between Excel and Workspace or Web and kind of make it look seamless in terms of how users interact with the technology. When we talk about the back-end analytic engine and what we're doing to improve the performance, one of the things that we deliver is something called hierarchies, and really kind of delivers a scalable planning analytics application to your end users, where if you see on the left side, you can actually see kind of the real dimension, parent-child, if you will, in this case, states and cities. And then you may have attributes associated with those elements. Things like store type, maybe geographical location, whatever those attributes may be. And we can actually create a hierarchy off of that attribute so you can do your analysis just like if it was a real dimension on the interfaces that you'll see. So you can slice and dice by these attributes. Right, something really powerful, something that our customers, when they see it, really, really love it and can see real value to it. And then, of course, the last thing is, we won't demonstrate this, but really trying to expand the definition of planning analytics. So I don't know if you guys have seen Watson Analytics. I know Bruce Killian, who owns Watson Analytics, is here as well. Right, so Watson Analytics is incorporated with Planning Analytics, just like Cognos Analytics, which is a BI component incorporated with Planning Analytics. And so Watson Analytics gives you kind of the natural language capabilities. And we've actually built some of that natural language capabilities into our product as well. So you can just simply ask questions like, who are my most profitable customers? Or what customers are most likely to churn? And what Watson Analytics does is just simply gives you the answer based on the natural language question that you ask. And then it may also make suggestions. Well, have you thought about this? Or maybe these are the regions that you should really be looking at or concentrating. Right? We're not demonstrating that or talking about it, but just wanted to kind of let you know that expansion of the definition of planning is part of what we're doing with Planning Analytics from a direction perspective. Make sense? Okay. Demonstration. So if there's questions, please jump in. And I think the screen may be oops. It's on my slide. What happened?
If you're going from PM1 to Planning Analytics, is that just an upgrade or a new purchase?
It is an upgrade, except for this workspace that I'm going to show you. That is an additional add-on. Does that make sense? I'm not sure why the monitor's hung on that while I...
This one thing, I'll just talk and then fill in some gap here, but one new thing with Planning Analytics, and I believe with Cognitive Analytics as well, is that every upgrade that you do, once you're on PA, is now what's called in-place upgrade. So, you know, when we always had like 10.1 and 10.2 and all these major hits, and you had to uninstall and then reinstall and reintegrate everything, that no longer is going to happen. The object is to actually take PA and do what's called in-place upgrade. So if you've done like a distribution, you'll be able to just turn the services off, run the install, and turn the services back on. That's where we're going with all this, and that's already in PA 2.0 right now today. Okay, so that's something we were going to talk about as well, but I'll fill in the gap because it looks like Jimmy's ready to go.
So in the next 10 minutes, I'm going to wow you. Right. I want to get one wow at least. Right. Right. I think these are my wow guys here.
All right.
All right. So I don't have a lot of time, but I mean, you got 10 minutes. But just I want to kind of show you a flavor for what I mean. So when we talk about workspace, this is workspace. It kind of gives you a window to your application. So there is a welcome screen, shared folders, personal folders, and depending on security rights and access, you have access to different parts of your model. So if I look at this particular model, it's actually called car sales, and gives me access to the data set related to this particular model. And let me just kind of navigate around the screen just to kind of give you a perspective of what we're looking at. So here's my servers, my TM1 servers, being pulled into my workspace. And that workspace is looking at this particular server called car sales. You can see the cubes, the dimensions, and so forth, typical of any TM1 application that's out there. And we create these reports, dashboards, and allow you to interact with the data from here. Right? So all that user interface that we saw before, whether you're a modeler or an administrator or a casual user or a power user or an executive, you log into one place, and security gives you access to different parts of the application, the model, and then the administrator will design what the interface would look like. And in fact, users can design this themselves. So a lot of self-service capabilities are built into this. But let me just kind of navigate through this and kind of just give you a flavor for what we're looking at. So here I can see my car sales data. So here's my version information. Whether I'm looking at actual data, budget data, sales information, or price or units. I can look at it by different colors of cars, customer target, engine size, and so forth, right? So I can really look at it from a high-level perspective and see exactly how my actual sales are performing relative to the customers that I'm looking at for this time period. And I can see within my quarterly results, maybe my T1 series are doing very well as my T series SUV. Now those are doing very well from a car sales perspective. So high-level dashboard for executives to kind of quickly see, get a pulse of the business by looking at metrics and graphs and charts and information that may be relevant to them. I could dig a little bit deeper, right? So if I wanted to look at it by region, so this was by product. Now I'm looking at this by region, and I can see by region by the same actual sales, total products by time. In this case, by vice president. And if I wanted to, by region as well, so by these regions, I could see my North America, Europe, and kind of see how we're doing from a sales perspective, and start to drill into this, my Americas, North America, and kind of see how Canada, Mexico, United States is doing from a sales perspective. So, very navigationally easy for users to drill into the data set and look at information in this case, by region, if I want to look at it by vice president, I could go ahead and look at it by vice president and kind of see how we're doing across maybe different vice presidents by region. But one of the really capabilities, I want to kind of just spend a little bit of time in terms of exploration, right? So I just saw me slice that data or drag a region or vice president by column. So that sort of ad hoc analysis capability is really inherently designed into the TM1 application. And so by looking at this particular screen, I could look at this by total product, total color, customer type, engine size, and so forth. And by sales data. And if I wanted to look at my product information, I can simply look at product and start to drill into my S-Series sedan for a quarter. And by looking at it maybe by different colors, right? And so these colors are really kind of attributes of the data. And so by looking at this screen, I can start to analyze information by my product, by color type, or see what particular customers are actually buying my S-Series sedan. So in this case, it's my families. And within the families, they're actually buying a lot more of the S-Series 3.4 engine versus the 1.8 engine and so forth. So you can kind of see exactly the profile of the customers, in this case, that are buying your particular product. And that gives you information to plan and budget, right? So as I'm looking at this, I may want to increase maybe production on my S-Series sedans. And so for next year, I want to ramp up production. And so I want to see what the impact of my bottom line would be by doing that planning and budgeting. And so that takes us into our planning and budgeting app component of the application, where I can start to enter data and write back to the system. And because it's in memory, as you know, as you enter data, it's kind of real-time calculation to see immediately what the impact of that is. And so as users, I could come in here and actually create sandboxes as well. So I may have my best case, worst case. This may be my best case scenario. And in that best case scenario, or maybe a worst case, right? So I may have several different sandboxes that I can create and kind of do analysis around that as part of my planning and budgeting. This may be my worst case. And as I look at my S34 sedans for Canada, Mexico for the month of February for budget and my units, I really want to make that 2,000 units, and I'll use a little quick command to copy that across the months. Right? So by doing that, I've actually entered 2,000 units of sales per month across all the time periods for next year's budget cycle for my S sedan. So if you're not familiar with TM1, what you just seen here is actually kind of the changing of color, where I can see at the lower level Canadian sales region, I can see the impact to North America to world, right? So here you can kind of see my world is at now 7,542 units in terms of units sold. And if I look at other units sold, and if I scroll over to the right, you can kind of see what my total sales are for, or actually rolling forecast for the next 12 or 24 periods. So Mexico as well, let's make that 1,000 units going across, and I'll enter that in. And then United States would be 1,000 going across as well. And maybe I want to grow that by 10% going across. So that's a growth of 10% going across for the next 10 years and so forth. So these are quick commands. Yes?
So this is the PAW, the PAW interface?
It is. This is the PAW, right.
Comes
Yes.
only with Planning Analytics.
Right. Comes with Planning Analytics. It's the PAW workspace interface. So if you remember that screen, workspace and Excel were the two interfaces. This is the workspace interface. Yes. Good point. That makes sense? Yes, question?
It would be similar to T1 Web on steroids, right? It's way beyond T1 Web. It's a web interface.
Totally, it's totally way beyond TM1 Web, and you'll see some other. If I got, let me see. All right, I got 2 minutes. Just kidding. Ken, I may eat into your time a little bit, but so just wanted to kind of show you bottoms up, right? So that's bottoms up. Yeah, Canada, Mexico, United States goes up to North America to world. You kind of see what happens at the world. But what if I wanted to increase it at the North America level, parent? I want to increase that by 10% going across, right? So I just made an increase of 10% at North America and actually traced it and then kind of blew that back down to the children below it, right? So that's the power of the technology, where I can do not just a bottoms-up plan, but I can also do a top-down adjustment. So if I wanted to hold North America, let me hold that at the fourth, oops, sorry. If I know how to type. So North America, I'm going to hold that. I know that's a good number for North America. I'm going to hold that at 4,400. And then for the world, I really, because this is my best case scenario, I want to really sell this to my families that are out there. I'm going to increase this by 20% across the world, which means that the other parts of the world will have to pick up the difference, right? So I just increased it by 20%, and then what that's done is actually made the adjustment to all the other sales regions around the world, but held North America intact. Right, very powerful from a what-if capabilities and planning and budgeting perspective, right? So I've had my analysis, I've got my dashboards, KPIs, I drill down, I can see my sedans are doing really well across my families. That's my best case scenario. I want to ramp up the sale. I come into budgeting and planning, I increase it by 10% or 20%. That's my target for next year. I tell my salespeople, go out and make the sale. For the dealers. But, you know, there's a worst case as well, right? Oh, that was my best case, I'm sorry.
What was your best case?
My best case is 50%. My best case is going to be 50% across the world. I just made increase that by 50% and copy that across for all the time periods and so forth.
So how is this integrated with Cognos Analytics?
So that's what we talk about in the second half. So this is all. This is against TM1 data, right? So Cognos Analytics is kind of the BI reporting against that TM1 cube, which is kind of the reporting side. But this is just like within the planning analytics environment.
And you still develop using Architect or Performance Modeler?
So that's the kind of the direction, right? So Architect, Performance Modeler is all on the left-hand side in terms of legacy interfaces, all moving towards this interface to do the development. So let me show you what I mean by that. And so if I come into my screen, let me just open this up and create a new screen. And so if I look at my car sales, remember those dimensions, right? Here's my dimensions. And so for example, my product region, I'm going to edit that. Oops. I'll just come in here. So I'll create a new sheet. If I come into my dimensions, I can go ahead and edit this within this view. And if I look at my attributes, here's all the attributes that is actually associated with my dimension. So from this interface, this is a modeling interface where I can now create attributes, I can create groups, I can create parents, child, my hierarchies, and create cubes and so forth.
Or your rules.
And your rules as well, absolutely.
Where?
So if I look at edit rules, here's rules for the cubes and so forth.
You even have a new piece in here where you can call up the functionality and it'll give you like a context-sensitive functionality of what the rules actually is and a definition below it, all within the one screen.
Right, so if I look at my interior style, that's an attribute of my product set. And if I look at my product dimension, I don't see it as a hierarchy. I'm just going to go ahead and right mouse click on this and create hierarchy. So across that attribute of my interior, I've actually created a hierarchy, and now the interior style shows up within my product. If I come back to my data exploration, I can now look at this by interior products. Right, so that sort of analysis is really unprecedented. This is where I get a wow. Wow. Where's my wow? Right, exactly. I love this. I wish I had some stuff to throw.
You gotta give us a signal.
Oh, yeah, sorry. All right. But as you can see, right, by creating attributes, creating hierarchy, now I can do my analysis and look at it by leather, by different attributes of my, my product set, whether it's cloth and so forth, to see how we're doing from a sales perspective and start to do my planning and budgeting across that, right? Something very, very different and unique. But it gets even better, right? So if I look at, that's the modeling side. But if I wanted to create this on my own as a self-service, right? As a user, I could come in here and actually create my own self-service dashboards and reports. I can collect these. So for example, if I come into my region, I really like this quarterly result report, I can go ahead and collect it, or I can come in and create my own. So if I come into this view within my cubes, let me just go ahead and look at my views, world sales. That's something that I like. I'm going to go ahead and pull that in. So by dragging and dropping that into my canvas, I actually have now a view that shows me sales across regions. I could pull this in, and one of the things that we can do is actually create filters off of these reports. So for example, I may want to look at my products, my versions of data, and in this particular view, I'll synchronize this, meaning that as I select different products and different versions, this will update immediately. So for example, if I come into this view, and rather than looking at total product, I want to look at my S series. That's my S series. Here's my budget or actual. All right, and let me just duplicate that. And by duplicating it, now this is a view that shows me, this may be a graphical perspective of that same data set. And so as I create my dashboard or report, if you will, I, as a user, have this tremendous ability to really create, fancy reports or dashboards that's maybe relevant to me. So here's total products, actual and version, actual budget, and I can see the difference and so forth. The other thing that you can do, and we won't spend a lot of, so if I pull in an Excel report, so for example, I may have created an Excel report, and I don't have time to show you how to create an Excel report, but it's just like perspectives. If you create perspectives reports, I can actually pull in an Excel report into this canvas as well. So that's an Excel report, and then within this Excel report, if I want to synchronize that with my objects as well, let's say my version and account, 2017 budget. Yeah. So you can synchronize an Excel report to that and kind of look at this from an Excel perspective. And so these are Excel reports that I've created, and I can go ahead and pull that into my view and actually synchronize that with these widgets or these filters. So tremendous capabilities. And if you wanted to spend more time on this afterwards, we're here all day today. I can show you exactly how this Excel interface works, how it synchronizes and so forth, and how easy it is to build Excel reports and put it together and kind of get deeper into kind of functionality. All right?
Is it only Excel, or you can bring in any other data source and synchronize it?
You
Like
can,
an actual database from data warehouse table, and then you just merge it in here.
right, so you need TM1 or the engine. Any data source can go into that engine. And then from there, Excel or Workspace is what's used to kind of reflect and analyze that data and enter data back into TM1.
But in that case, we are not importing the data, we're just connecting to the source, right?
You're connecting to the source and importing that into TM1 for the analysis that you see here.
Oh, okay.
So it has,
you're increasing the size of
The TM1
the TM1 model.
right.
Yeah, but you also have the ability here to add text. You see there's videos. There's also iframes that you can add as well. So you can add an iframe to another HTTPS source and have that. So I'll use this for an administrative screen for things like I'll use Command Center. There's an admin page that we can pull up. So I'll use it just for administrative functions as well.
So is there a reverse functionality? Like when you're importing from the external source into the TM1, can we send the TM1 data back to the
There is another utility that we have that we can do that with, yes.
Okay.
And we can send it back to any star schema on any SQL.
Perfect.
Yep.
Right.
Thank you. Perfect.
Is that embedded for this? Sorry, maybe I have
It's not. It's a product called Cognos Integration Server, and depending on what license you bought, you can get that with the purchase.
Right. So how you set up these books and these tabs and the data, access to the data models, these are the TM1 servers that's pulling data from your source systems, is really up to you, right? But you do need to pull data into it. Okay.
And metrics is built into TM1 now. So for those of you who are BI with Metrics Studio, you're going to see more pull go towards TM1, where metrics is now going to be in PAW and in TM1 Web.
Great.
So you see the strategy maps, impact diagrams, KPIs, all that metric stuff. It actually ends up natively. It works very well with TM1, no web source.
All right. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kent Rubin and Mike Bender to talk about the integration between TM1 and CA, or PA and CA. All right.
All right, yeah, so now that you've seen Planning Analytics Workspace in action, the underlying engine that you saw back there is what's called TM1, and it's that multi-dimension in-memory 64-bit engine that very quickly responds to queries, be it from Planning Analytics Workspace or from any other source. So the source that we're going to talk about today is around Cognos Analytics, and to do that, you have to integrate the two. So this is what I'm going to do is talk for the next few minutes here about the integration process. How many of those, well, before we start here, let me just kind of tell you about myself. I'm Kent Rubin. I've been with IBM for 13 years within the business analytics practice. Some of your faces are familiar from when I was working the BI side of things, but now I'm on the financial planning and operational planning side of things. So, and Mike will be coming up here and providing color commentary as needed here. But we're just going to go through the benefits of doing this type of integration between Cognos Analytics and Planning Analytics, and we'll talk what you need to have in place, where you need to be, what things have to be put together before we can begin the process. And then we'll quickly explain the process and then kind of show some of the optimizing techniques and features that are available with this through the connectors and through some things that we can optimize around those. And then we'll talk at the very end about what's available in the cloud and what's available on premise in doing this kind of interaction. So before I start, I know pretty much everybody raised their hand here that says that they are using TM1. Is there anybody here using Cognos Analytics here as well, or at least Cognos? Okay, we got a few Cognos Analytics folks. Great. So what we're going to do here is kind of explain why this is important. We'll start out with that. You can kind of think of it as this TM1 data source as another a source that you can connect to and retrieve data from. So that really opens up some new possibilities for use cases. If you remember, the power of TM1 is the ability to pull that data in and to manipulate it if necessary, but it could also be a static source of data in memory that you could use to integrate with other Cognos data that you have inside your Cognos BI or Cognos Analytics environment. So the power of merging these two together. Cognos Analytics lets you connect to many different data sources, and now with the integration with Planning Analytics, it brings that new addition that gives you insight that you didn't have before. One customer could, for example, take existing sales data that they have within their Planning Analytics workspace and then merge that with, say, something that came from Cognos Analytics on like EPA violation data or something like that, and then find out which customers have been violating data sets from that and use that to kind of find new sales opportunities or find new data or new ideas that you haven't thought of before. So really, the power here is bringing disparate data sets together and using the power of TM1's source on the back end. So TM1 cubes are really built to be fast. So that's another advantage of doing this type of integration. If you're already using Cognos Analytics and you're using Cognos Analytics Security or CAM Security, you have that ability to roll that over or use that alongside of your Planning Analytics data. So you don't have to create two separate security models. You don't have to keep track of two sets of users and groups and things like that. They can all work together seamlessly. And we've made the process of publishing TM1 cubes even easier. In the past, if you have been using TM1 as a data source for your Cognos BI environment, there was a process where you had to go in and you had to basically go into Framework Manager and connect to it and then publish it and then go through that way. You don't have to do that anymore. So we made it a lot easier and streamlined this whole process for you. So really, before you can start, before you can do this, you have to have a couple of these things in place. So you have to have, from a requirement perspective, you have to have at least BI version 10 has to be converted to 11.06 or higher. And then if you already have TM1 version 10, you need to migrate that up to Planning Analytics version 2.0 or higher. So those two things have to be in place. You have to be 11.06 on CA and you have to be at 2.0 or 2.0 on PA. By the way, there's a lot of words here. I'm not going to do a demo of this because it really doesn't flow well. But I will provide this as a reference for you afterwards, so you can have this as a checklist of this is what needs to happen in this. So think of this more as a reference presentation. I'll still try to make it exciting and fun, but without doing the demo stuff.
We'll take a while.
We'll take a while whenever you want to give it a while. That's fine. So, all right. So, in a sense, PA then becomes a data source for CA. So now we're going to shift our mindset. We're thinking about Cognos Analytics here. We're looking at Planning Analytics as being the data source for that. It can be, it is used as a data source, and when you connect to it and you query it, it is an OLAP source. So all the MDX and all the OLAP type of commands and OLAP mindset that you have when you're building reports in Cognos Analytics, that has to flow through. You have to keep in mind that you are using an OLAP source. You can basically use MDX, or it's using that type of language to communicate back to the Planning Analytics cube. And the way that communicates back and forth is using a REST API. So we've gone away from the client API, which is very chatty, very, we would tell people to put in Citrix servers across LANs or WANs if you had people that wanted to use these applications, because the client that we had before was very kind of heavy and chatty. Now we've got to a very next generation type of REST API that very quickly and very easily connects to and queries this data.
The previous one, right, was the TM1 API. So for those who are familiar connecting BI to TM1, you had to go in and install the TM1 API from the client of TM1 onto all of your BI dispatchers. You don't need to do that anymore with this. That eliminates that completely.
Easy peasy, very easy. So the one thing though to remember though, if you are going to be using CAM authentication, is if the Planning Analytics cube is secured against, or server is secured against a CAM namespace, it can only be secured against one of those namespaces. So if you have in other words, if you have multiple Cognos Analytics environments, many content stores, many things like that, that TM1 cube can only point to one at a time, kind of thing. There's some workarounds you can do, and if you have questions or if you're in that type of scenario, let me know, because I've had to go through that with a couple customers, and I can help you find a path to make this easy for you. So if you already are on Cognos 10 and you are thinking about moving to Cognos Analytics, we have this mindset of no reports left behind. They will all migrate fine from Cognos version 10 to Cognos Analytics. There's no need to change anything, but keep in mind that Cognos, or the compatible query mode is to TM1 as a data source, is still not supported in Cognos Analytics. So which is fine, because you want to use that dynamic query mode, you want to use that extra memory, you want to be in that, take advantage of that to get the faster queries on the Cognos Analytics side. All the old stuff that you worked with before in Cognos, I shouldn't say old stuff, but the stuff you may be working for right now in Cognos 10 or whatever, like Framework Manager, Analysis Studio, things like that, that will still all work fine and functions well within Cognos Analytics itself. So right now there is a problem with TM1 web sheets and cube views, but we're working on that. So if you do have a lot of web sheets and cube views specifically, if you're using TM1 web sheets, you can talk to us about how to get a workaround on that.
Being a complete open book here.
Yep.
These are the things that Kent and I deal with almost, like we hear things. So we wanted this reference to be more, we know about this, we want you to know about it. We
Yep.
don't want you to have to deal with it and then have to come back to us. That's why we just laid it all out there.
Right. And that's why we're kind of using this as a reference slide deck for you, for future use, so that, we can always say, hey, we told you so, or hey, this is where you look it up, and here it is. There's a wow. All right. So let's start the process. Let's be at that point now where we're going to start this migration process. Now, what we need to know is a few things on the Cognos BI side, so that we can configure our Planning Analytics environment to communicate back and forth to our Cognos Analytics environment. So we do need to know a few things, such as write this down or document. What's your gateway URL? What is your dispatcher URL? what is the namespace ID that you're using if you're using CAM security in your Cognos Analytics environment, which I think if you are using Cognos Analytics, pretty much everybody's using CAM authentication for that. So know what that namespace ID is. And then from the from the Planning Analytics side, know what that TM1 admin host name is. Document that. Document the IP address of your Planning Analytics Workspace server, because these are all things that you will need to fill in the gaps for when you're starting the configuration process. For those of you who already have Cognos 10 and Planning or TM1 and have done some interaction before, you're familiar with the BI_interop zip file, which comes included with the installation of TM1 and Planning Analytics. This interop file is basically just a little zip file that contains a couple HTML files and some XML files that you need to copy over to your Cognos Analytics environment. And what that does is it provides that interface where the web server knows how to communicate back to the Planning Analytics side of things. So we give you the files, you need to copy them over, and then you'll need to configure them. That's why you needed to write that stuff down in the previous step there. So unzip that, copy that over, and then if you are going to be using CAM authentication, everybody knows the two-step dance you have to do where you have to turn it off or go to mode 1 in TM1, change it to integrated security mode 1 or 2, and then add that new user from your new CAM environment so that they have admin rights, and then switch it back to mode 5 if you want to go that route.
It's the exact same process we've been doing for the last 3
Yeah.
versions.
You know the two-step dance that you do.
With the exception of, well, we'll get to it, but just know your PAW server. One thing we didn't mention, and I will right now, is the PAW server. TM1 as it stands, PA, I'll call it Planning Analytics Local, is the exact same, right? You got your data tier, your web tier, your app tier, and depending on how you want to web balance those web and app tiers, you can do all that. What PAW is another tier just added on to Planning Analytics. So we won't talk about the actual setup of PAW. I don't think we get into that, but we can talk about that more later. Just know that it's another tier, and you do need that IP because there's a certain file you need to edit, and that's one time it's done, and you never have to look at it again.
Okay, so now that we've documented those things, and now that we've copied our zip files over to the Cognos Analytics server, and we're ready to go by starting to the process of editing those configuration files. So the first configuration file that you should be modifying is your TM1 sconfig file. So every TM1 server has its own TM1 sconfig file, and that's where it tells you what integrated mode you're in, and then more importantly, if you're using if you're using integrated mode 5, which is CAM security, you need to know the server CAM URI and the client CAM URI. So open that file with a simple text editor, make those adjustments on here from what you documented in the previous slide, and then save that file, and you're ready to go from that end. On the TM1P INI file, which is the file that you're using for Architect, which is still valid within Planning Analytics, you need to edit the TM1P.ini file, and that's found in this location that you see on the screen here, and you simply change it to allow import to true, and then you enter in the Cognos Gateway URI into that file as well. And there was an important thing.
Has anyone ever edited that file? You're aware of that one, right? Because you go into Architect of your Architect, and you go to bring in a file in mode 2 or a user, and it doesn't show up. That you need to edit this. So the key thing about editing this, you can't edit it while Architect is still open. So close Architect, edit the file, then bring it back, and you'll be golden. Just a little trick for that.
Okay, yeah, that's important. You can't have it open when you're doing that, so thanks. All right, so next, I know we got to move kind of quick here, but so this is the process. This is that two-step dance I was telling you about before, where when you're integrating CAM security, you got to change it back to 2 or 1 or 2, add it, and then change it back to 5, and then this allows the import of users to Architect. But that's what he's about to point out.
No need to restart server when doing this.
That's huge. That should get a wow moment. Because in the past, whenever we had to change anything in this file, the only way that the effect would take place is if you restarted the TM1 server. And some folks have TM1 servers that take 3 hours to start, so what a pain. You don't have to do that anymore. That's kind of a nice wow moment there. All right, so let's move on. If we're going to be switching to Integrated Security Mode 5, these are some of the things that you have to make sure is in place. Again, this is kind of a reference. I'm not going to bore you by reading every single line of this thing, but these are the things you have to make modifications to. Basically, it's this. In any of these files, the TM1S config file, the PM hub, the planning, the variables file, anytime it says the word localhost in those files, change it to whatever what it should be, right? Either the server URL or the PAW URL. Just change localhost to whatever. That's kind of the way to sum up that slide. So when you're going through this process and you're having to edit these 4 files, that's what you need to do. Okay? Go ahead.
That PM hub, you're normally just do it the same that you would with all the other files for those who've done CAM integration. The big change with PA is you have to add the Planning Analytics Workspace, that new tier. You have to add that to that particular element as well. It's needed for the Excel added. That's just an extra little thing, so the reference is there.
I hope they can hear you on this thing. So,
Oh,
you have a recorder too. Okay, good. All right, we're in stereo. Good. All right, so let's move on. So now there's a new thing. There's a new connector in Cognos Analytics. When you open up Cognos Analytics now, you'll still see the same TM1 connector when you're creating a data source connection to your Cognos Analytics or to your TM1 server. There's now a new one called Planning Analytics, and it's totally different. And you want to make sure that you want to change to that because you get a lot of cool benefits out of that when you're using the Planning Analytics connector. You get the ability to use hierarchies, which Jim showed you during his Planning Analytics demonstration. That ability to, you no longer have to have 35 dimensions in your cubes. You can just have a few dimensions and then a lot of attributes that can be thought of as hierarchies that shrink the size of your cube and make it much easier to use and more understandable for people because it gets confusing when you get so many dimensions on a page. But the only way you can take advantage of this is if you're using this type of connector. So you have to select Planning Analytics. Within Cognos Analytics, you'll select the data source type. There's that drop-down box, and you'll see Planning Analytics listed there. So it's faster. It uses less memory because of it's using hierarchies and things like that. So hierarchies is we can't emphasize enough how important, how great that new feature is to Planning Analytics. Planning Analytics connector also uses the REST API. So think about that. So before, when you had to have the client installed on all these servers just so you can use the APIs that came with the old TM1 client, now you don't need that anymore. If you use the REST API, it's a lot faster. It's using that technology or that type of API connector to connect back. So it's an easier setup. It's a much more flexible type of integration. And it supports those captions like we mentioned before. We've found that performance, for the most part, is better when you're using the new Planning Analytics connector. Most reports had comparable, but many were faster than slower. So the way that you do this, though, you do have to do a little bit of a 2-step jump, and it's documented here for your future reference. But it's basically, if you already have a TM1 connector, if you have a report within Cognos Analytics that's pointing to a TM1 source, what you need to do is you know how you can go into Cognos Administration, you add another connector to the same data source that's a Planning Analytics connector, and then you remove the TM1 one, and then you basically republish the package. And then you don't have to change the report, you don't have to rewrite the report, you don't have to change the XML of the report, anything like that. You just simply add that connector and then remove the old one and republish the package. Boom. It's kind of a 2-step dance, but it's pretty quick and once you do it once or twice, you're pretty confident it is how easy it is to do. So just republish and then test to make sure your reports are running faster, which they should be. Okay? So that's what I just said here. Okay, so using aliases. So to take advantages right now within Cognos Analytics to see these captions within Planning Analytics, You do have to make this adjustment to the file that's shown right here. You do this within
It's within TI, it's a TI process.
within the Turbo Integrator process.
And it's done. But it's in order to, because they were using alias before, and now we use caption. When you're using CA against PA as a source.
So it's documented here. We don't have a lot of time. So one last slide. This is about the cloud integration and what's supported. I put together a little matrix here to say if you have Cognos Analytics on-premise and you have Planning Analytics on-premise, you're good to go. If you have Cognos Analytics on-premise, Planning Analytics in the cloud, I got a little bit of problems. It's coming, but right now we have some issues. The PA in the cloud, the CA cloud is coming very soon. I heard as early as it was supposed to like this week or next week. So it's very soon that this is coming. So we're working on it so that all these are able to be supported.
Does anyone have this scenario that's not supported that was interested in it? Or is most people local right now? Local? Okay.
Okay, and this was one final note that just came out yesterday from IBM. We're not recommending you upgrade from Planning Analytics Workspace 2.1, 2.2, or 2.3 for if you're using Windows 2016 only.
Which I think no one is right now.
Yeah, it doesn't affect Linux users. It's just the Windows 2016. Just the 2.4 upgrade is coming soon. Okay.
This is for the PAW portion, by the way.
This is for PAW.
For anyone PAW, not- yeah.
Question.
Yeah, so if I have CA 11.0.6.
Yep.
And we're currently at TM1 10.2.2 fixed back 7, and we want to go to the new Planning Analytics 2. Whatever X.
Yep.
Do I have to totally convert everything in order to get this to work? Can I have one TM1 old and one TM1 new? Do I have to do, I mean,
Yeah, you can use the old TM1 new with the TM1 API, and then you can go point another source, make a new one, bring all your data models over and point it to the PA using a PA connection. You're talking about TM1 as a data source?
well, I just want to know if I have to build a whole other CA environment for the new TM1 servers, because you have the interoperability package, which I have to put on the dispatchers. I already have one there from the older TM1 10.2.2.
If it's just a test environment, you could just simply upgrade the TM1 portion of it and switch your reports to point to PA instead of TM1.
Yeah, just change the configure the
Right,
H.
that's why I was hoping to have two servers side by side, and just, some people will be on the old server, some on the new until they all get over. Or do I have to build a whole other file?
When you're saying that, you're asking from the CA side, or BI
Yeah,
side?
from the BI side, yeah.
Because of the are you using CAM security?
Yes.
So that you can only do one-to-one then. Right.
Right, well, the TM1 they'll all be using the same namespace, yes.
Okay.
I'll think of
So
something for you.
let's think it offline. Kind
Yeah.
of
Yeah,
upgrade.
there may be a couple options you have that we can show you that you can do. All right, so again, I'm going to make this available for you for reference in the future, but I encourage you to try this out. If you have Planning Analytics in your environment and you do have Cognos Analytics, use the power of both of them by bringing them together using this technology. So thank you for your time. That's it for me. Thanks, Mike.